Have you ever wanted to make annoying ads like these just disappear? And not just in your browser, on your smart TV, your phone, your tablet apps. This £15 board blocks ads and trackers across your entire network. And I'll show you how to build one step by step in this guide, even if you've never seen a command line. So to build a pihole, this is what you'll need. Firstly, a Raspberry Pi. I'm using this Pi 02. It's the cheapest and it's a low power option that's perfect for this. You could also use a Pi 3 or 4. It's a little overkill, but it does have an Ethernet connection built into the board, whereas the Pi 0 doesn't. So I've got this USB adapter. You'll also need a USB power supply and a micro SD card. To install the software, you probably need an adapter like this one so your SD card can be plugged into your computer. Links to everything you need are below. So the first thing we need to do to build a pihole is to install the software. If you go to the Raspberry Pi official website, under the software section, you'll be able to find the Raspberry Pi Imager. This is free and works with Windows, Mac or Linux. Just download whichever version you've got. Once you've downloaded, installed and opened up the Raspberry Pi Imager, you'll have this screen. The first thing we need to do is select which Raspberry Pi we've got. As I mentioned, I'm using the Raspberry Pi 02, but select whichever one you've got. The next thing we need to do is select the OS we want to install onto the SD card. For Pihole, we want Raspberry Pi OS Lite. We can find this in the menu under Raspberry Pi OS Other, and there it is. The last thing we need to do is make sure we select the SD card we've plugged in. Then we can hit Next. It'll ask us if we want to apply custom settings. We want to say Edit and make sure we've set a username and password. Then we want to double check under Services we've got Enable SSH. This will allow us to connect wirelessly to the board to set things up. We'll save that and we'll say yes. And then we'll click Yes to confirm. And now the imager will run and write those files to the SD card, and we just let it run. And there we go. So once we've got our SD card with the Raspberry Pi software on it, we can plug that into our Raspberry Pi and plug it into a USB to power it on. We're going to give it 2 minutes or so just to power up and load everything on, and then we can open up the terminal. So in order to talk to the Raspberry Pi and install the Pihole software, we're going to use the SSH function. To do this on Mac or Linux, open up the terminal, and on Windows, open up PowerShell. Now the Pi has had time to boot up, the next thing to do is to connect to it wirelessly to install Pihole. To do this, we need the IP address. To find out the IP address of the device, we can type in ping raspberrypi.local. And there we've got the IP address. So to connect wirelessly to the Raspberry Pi, we type in SSH, the username, followed by the IP address. And there we go, we're in. So the first thing we need to do, we want to update the Raspberry Pi as we've just installed a new operating system. We're going to type in the command sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade -y. Then we hit enter and it will update. Give it a few minutes and it will run through the update process. So now we've got a fresh install of Raspberry Pi OS Lite, and we've also updated it to make sure we've got all the latest versions. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to install Pihole itself. One simple command will install everything. We're going to type in the command that you can see on the screen. And again, enter, and Pihole will start installing. Again, we just need to give this some time for it to load and go through the installation process. Once we see this screen, we'll say OK, OK again, and then we want to change to continue. And this is telling us that we need to make sure that we have set a static IP address to our Pihole. Next, you'll get the screen to select the upstream DNS provider. Here, you want to select Google or Cloudflare. All this does is sets the location Pihole sends requests, it doesn't block. We can say yes to this block list, but we'll be adding more later anyway. And we can say yes to query logging. Now we've entered that information, Pihole will continue the installation process. And there we go, installation complete. Do take note of your admin password at this point. But if you do miss it, it'll also be located in the text outputted in the command log. So the next thing we want to do is we want to log into the Pihole dashboard. In your browser, type in your IP address of the Pihole. Now we can log into our Pihole using that password that we remembered. And here we go, we're in the dashboard. First, there's a couple of things we need to do to set up pihole. You'll see that nothing is being blocked yet because we haven't told our network to route our traffic through the pihole. So what we need to do is we need to go to our router admin page. This is the hub manager for my router. You'll have to look into how you can manage your hub for your internet provider. So within the hub manager, I'm going to go to my devices and I'm going to double check that my Raspberry Pi is set to always use this IP address. This means it's got a static IP address and it won't change. This is really important because if the IP address for your device changes, it breaks everything. So next we're going to go into the advanced settings to turn off DHCP and instead turn that on within pihole. By turning this off, it's not my network router that hands out the IP addresses for anything on my network, and instead it will be pihole that hands out the IP address for each device that wants to connect on my home network. This means that it'll automatically route the DNS through pihole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter the range of IP addresses I want pihole to hand out. I'm going to start with 64 and I'm going to end in 252. That's just exactly what my router was doing. I also need to add in my router IP address. I got this from the previous Hub Manager page. And there we go. Pihole should now be set up. To test this out, first I need to disconnect any device that's already connected to my network and reconnect it. This will refresh the connection and means that pihole will give it a new IP address. So I'll just refresh the screen. And there we go, my phone is the first thing that's connected to pihole. Let's see if it's blocked any ads. So I've done a few quick internet searches on my phone. Let's go back to the dashboard and see what it says. And there we go, we know we're getting queries blocked, so we know it's working. However, this is just using the default block list. We can do much better than that. There's loads of community run block lists, so let's go and install some of these into our pihole device. There are a huge number of community run block lists out there for pihole, all with a different level of aggressiveness and a different target of the sorts of things that they block. Some focus more on trackers, some focus more on ads, and it all depends on your usage, the devices you use, the sites you typically visit, and what you want to block. There's no one solution that's right for everyone, so I encourage you to have a look online at what block lists are out there and what might work best for you. This is the one I'm going to use. But no matter what block list or lists you pick, they're all installed in the same way on pihole. To add a block list, we go down to the Lists tab, and then we just paste the URL into the address and hit Add Block List. And we can do this as many times for as many different lists as you want to add. And then once you're happy with all these lists you've added, we need to refresh pihole so that it pulls all these new lists into its block list. We go down to Tools and Update Gravity and hit Update. Give pihole a second to update everything and all these new lists will be pulled through. And now back on the main dashboard page, we'll see the number of domains on our main block list has increased. Occasionally, you might find a website that you want to visit is being blocked. What we can do is we can add that to the whitelist, and that will mean that it won't block it anymore. So we go to domains. By pasting the URL of the website that you want to allow into this domains to be added, you can then hit Add to Allow Domains. This will mean that this whole website will be allowed through the block list and won't be blocked anymore. You can also use this to add to the denied list, and this will add individual websites to the block list if you want to block individual websites. Now your pihole's set up, you might want to check out this video where I added a really cool sleek desktop screen to my pihole